"You will not sit at this table," my son-in-law shouted at the restaurant, knocked my plate to the floor and said, "Clean this up now or you don't eat." I laughed loudly, ordered another meal, and paid the bill for every customer. When the waiter handed him the check for $8,000, he trembled and turned pale. "I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Walter, and I'm 63 years old. I never thought I'd spend a Thursday evening standing in the middle of a crowded restaurant with marinara sauce splattered across my shoes, but life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. The moment I walked through those heavy oak doors of Bella Notte, I felt it. That thick tension in the air, like walking into a room right after an argument. The Italian restaurant was packed, every table filled with couples sharing wine, families celebrating birthdays, business people closing deals over pasta. The chandeliers cast a warm golden glow over everything, making it look like a scene from a movie. I spotted Claire immediately, my daughter, moving between tables in her manager uniform, that professional smile plastered on her face. Then I saw him, Peter. My son-in-law sat at a large corner table with 5 other men in expensive suits. The kind that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. They were laughing, loud and obnoxious, the type of laughter that comes from too much wine and too much ego. Peter had his jacket draped over the back of his chair, his tie loosened just enough to look casual but still professional. He was in his element, showing off. I made my way toward their table. I wasn't planning to intrude on his business dinner, just wanted to say a quick hello, maybe catch Claire for a moment to give her the envelope I had in my pocket. $300. Not much, but it was what I could spare this month to help with groceries. She never asked, but I knew things were tight even with Peter's fancy lawyer salary. Peter saw me before I reached the table. His expression shifted from animated storytelling to something cold, something I'd seen before, but never quite this intense. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor loud enough to make nearby tables turn. "Walter." He said my name like it was a curse word. I stopped, confused. "Hey, Peter, You're not sitting at this table." His voice exploded across the restaurant. Every conversation stopped. Every fork froze midway to mouths. The classical music playing softly in the background suddenly seemed deafening in the silence that followed. I felt my face flush hot. "I wasn't trying to sit down, I just wanted to—" But Peter wasn't listening. He grabbed the plate the waiter had just placed in front of an empty chair. A beautiful dish of chicken marsala, and before I could process what was happening, he hurled it toward me. It didn't hit me directly, but it crashed to the floor right at my feet, ceramic shattering, sauce and chicken exploding across my pants and shoes. "Clean it up!" Peter's face was red now, a vein pulsing in his temple. "Clean it up right now or you don't eat!" I stood there frozen. The humiliation wasn't just the sauce on my clothes or the broken plate at my feet. It was every eye in that restaurant locked on me. It was the pity in some faces, the amusement in others. It was seeing Claire standing near the kitchen door, her hand over her mouth, tears in her eyes, but not moving, not defending me, not saying a single word. Peter's colleagues shifted uncomfortably. One of them, a younger guy with slicked back hair, muttered something that sounded like, "Maybe that's too far," but Peter shot him a look that shut him up immediately. Something inside me cracked. Not broke, just cracked, like ice on a frozen lake when the temperature shifts just enough. For years I'd swallowed every condescending comment, every dismissive gesture, every time Peter made me feel like I was less than human because I worked with my hands instead of sitting behind a desk. I'd done it for Claire, believing that keeping the peace was worth my dignity. But standing there, with marinara sauce soaking through my socks, I realized something. I was done. I didn't bend down to clean it. Instead, I looked Peter straight in the eye. My voice came out calm, steady, almost eerily quiet compared to his shouting. "I'm not cleaning that up." Peter's eyebrows shot up, surprised. "What did you just say?" I turned toward the nearest waiter, a young kid who looked absolutely terrified. "Excuse me, could you bring me another entree? Whatever the special is tonight." The waiter glanced nervously between me and Peter. "Sir, I continued, reaching into my jacket pocket for my wallet. "I'd like the check for my meal, and everyone else's meal in this restaurant." The restaurant somehow got even quieter. Peter's face went from red to pale in seconds. "What?" I repeated myself, louder this time so everyone could hear. I'm paying for everyone, every single table. Add it all to one bill and bring it to me." The manager, who had rushed over when the plate shattered, looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "Sir, do you understand how much that would—" "I understand perfectly." I pulled out my credit card, the one I rarely used, the one connected to an account Peter knew nothing about. "Just do it." 20 minutes later, as I sat at the bar sipping water and eating the veal piccata they'd brought me, the manager approached with a leather folder. His hands trembled slightly as he opened it. "Sir, your total comes to $8,472. I nodded, signed the receipt, and added a $2,000 tip for the staff who'd had to witness that disaster. Then I stood and walked toward the door. As I passed Peter's table, I paused. He was staring at the check the waiter had just handed him, confusion and rage mixing on his face as he realized what I'd done. "Enjoy your evening, Peter," I said quietly. Then I walked out into the cool night air, leaving behind a restaurant full of whispers and one very stunned son-in-law. As I sat in my truck in the parking lot, my hands shaking on the steering wheel, I didn't feel victorious. I felt exhausted. But beneath that exhaustion was something else, something I hadn't felt in years, the faint, fragile beginning of freedom. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I drove to my workshop, the small building behind my house where I'd spent the last 40 years working with wood. The smell of sawdust and varnish hit me as I unlocked the door, and for the first time all evening, I could breathe properly. I sat on my workbench, still wearing those sauce-stained pants, and let myself remember how we'd gotten here. How a simple man like me ended up paying $8,000 just to prove a point to a son-in-law who'd never respected me from day one. Peter came into our lives 6 years ago. Claire brought him home for Sunday dinner, and I could tell immediately what kind of man he was. The way he looked around our modest house, his eyes scanning everything like he was calculating its worth. The way he shook my hand, limp and quick, like touching me might somehow contaminate him. But Claire's eyes were shining, and she kept touching his arm, laughing at his jokes that weren't really funny. "Dad, Peter's a corporate lawyer," she'd said, pride dripping from every word. "He just made junior partner at Whitmore and Associates." I'd smiled and congratulated him, even though his handshake had told me everything I needed to know. Over dinner, he'd asked what I did, and when I told him I was a carpenter, ran my own small woodworking business, his interest died like a candle in the wind. "Oh, manual labor." He'd said it like I'd told him I collected garbage, but I bit my tongue because Claire was happy. That was what mattered, right? That's what I kept telling myself for 6 years. Through the engagement party where Peter introduced me to his colleagues as Claire's father, he does something with wood. Through the wedding planning where every suggestion I made was dismissed because we need this to look sophisticated, Walter, not rustic. Through the actual wedding where I was seated at a table in the back, far from the family table because Peter's law firm partners needed those premium spots. I paid for half that wedding, $15,000, my life savings at the time. Claire had come to me crying because Peter's parents would only pay for their side, and she wanted her dream venue. I never told her I had to take out a loan against my workshop to cover it. The same workshop I'd built from nothing. The same place where I'd taught her to sand wood when she was 7, where she'd made her first birdhouse. "I'll pay you back, Dad," she'd promised, hugging me tight. "As soon as we're settled, I promise." That was 6 years ago. I never got a dollar back. Never asked for it either. But the money wasn't what hurt. It was watching my daughter slowly disappear into Peter's world. The way she started correcting my grammar at family dinners. The way she stopped visiting the workshop, stopped asking about my projects. The way she'd apologize for me in front of Peter's friends, like my existence was something to be explained away. "Dad's just old-fashioned," she'd say with a nervous laugh when I'd ask a question that Peter found stupid. "He doesn't really understand how the modern world works." I'm 63, not dead. I understand plenty. What Peter didn't understand, what neither of them knew, was that I wasn't just some poor carpenter scraping by. 20 years ago, my father died and left me a piece of land out near the county line. 40 acres of nothing but scrub brush and memories. I held on to it for years, partly because it reminded me of him, partly because I didn't know what else to do with it. Then, 15 years ago, the county decided to expand the highway. My worthless 40 acres suddenly became prime commercial real estate. I sold it for $375,000. After taxes and paying off the mortgage on my house, I had $280,000 left. I didn't tell anyone, not even Claire. Margaret, my wife, had just died the year before, and I was drowning in grief. That money felt like a burden, like something I didn't deserve when I couldn't save the woman I loved from cancer. So I put it away, invested it in boring safe bonds and CDs, watched it grow slowly, steadily. I kept working because I needed to work, needed the wood and the tools to keep me from thinking too much. By the time Claire married Peter, that money had grown to nearly $400,000. I never touched it. Kept living the same way, driving the same old truck, wearing the same clothes. It wasn't about being cheap. It was about knowing that money couldn't buy what I really wanted. My wife back, my daughter's respect, a family that didn't make me feel like a burden. But tonight, standing in that restaurant with sauce on my shoes and humiliation burning in my chest, something shifted. When Peter screamed at me to clean up that mess, when I saw Claire standing there doing nothing, I realized I'd been playing the wrong game all along. I'd been trying to earn their respect by being small, by not making waves, by accepting whatever scraps of dignity they threw my way. But respect doesn't work like that. You can't shrink yourself into someone's good graces. So I'd done something I never do. I'd made a scene. I'd spent money not because I needed to, but because I wanted to watch Peter's face when he realized his poor, pathetic father-in-law had just dropped more money on one dinner than Peter probably spent on his car payment. Was it petty? Absolutely. Did it feel good? In the moment, yes. But sitting in my workshop at nearly midnight, the satisfaction was already fading, replaced by something heavier. Sadness, maybe, or just exhaustion from pretending for so long. My phone buzzed. Claire. I stared at her name on the screen, my thumb hovering over the answer button. It buzzed again, and again. Then a text message popped up. Dad, we need to talk. That was embarrassing for everyone. Why would you do that? Embarrassing for everyone. Not, I'm sorry Peter humiliated you. Not, are you okay? Just concern about embarrassment. I turned off my phone and sat in the silence of my workshop, surrounded by half-finished projects and the ghost of the life I'd built. Tomorrow things would have to change. I couldn't keep doing this. Couldn't keep being the punching bag for a man who saw me as nothing, and a daughter who'd forgotten where she came from. But tonight, I just sat there in the sawdust, trying to remember what it felt like when Claire was 7 and thought I hung the moon, when she'd run into this very workshop after school, eager to show me her drawings, to help me measure wood, to just be near me. That little girl was gone, and maybe, just maybe, it was time I accepted that. 3 days passed before Claire showed up at my door. 3 days of silence from her, though my phone was full of messages from numbers I didn't recognize. Friends of Peter's, probably. Or maybe people from the restaurant who'd somehow gotten my contact. I deleted them all without reading. It was Sunday morning, early. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard her car pull into the driveway. Through the window, I watched her sit there for a full 5 minutes before getting out. She looked tired, older somehow than she had just days ago. Her hair wasn't done up the way she usually wore it, and she was in jeans and an old sweater, the kind of casual clothes she used to wear before Peter convinced her that image was everything. I didn't open the door before she knocked, made her wait, made her knock twice, actually. When I finally opened it, we just stood there looking at each other. Can I come in? Her voice was small. I stepped aside. She walked past me into the living room, and I noticed her eyes scanning the space like she was seeing it for the first time in years. Maybe she was. It had been at least 8 months since she'd been here. Coffee? I asked. Please. I poured 2 cups and sat down across from her at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd eaten breakfast together when she was growing up, where I'd helped her with homework, where Margaret used to serve Sunday pancakes. Dad, what happened the other night? Your husband threw food at me and told me to clean it up like I was a dog. I kept my voice level. In front of a restaurant full of people, while you stood there and watched. She flinched. He was drunk. He'd been drinking with his colleagues and... Claire. I set my cup down carefully. That's not the first time he's treated me like garbage. It's just the first time he did it that publicly. She stared into her coffee. I know he can be difficult. Difficult? I almost laughed. Honey, he's been treating me like I'm beneath him since the day you brought him home, and you've let him. Her eyes filled with tears. That's not fair, isn't it? When was the last time you defended me? When was the last time you told him to stop making jokes about my work, about my education, about the way I talk? She didn't answer because there wasn't an answer. We both knew it. Do you know what Peter said to me at your wedding? I asked quietly. During the reception, when you were off taking photos, he pulled me aside and said, "I'm doing Claire a favor by marrying her. She could have done better, but I'm willing to overlook her background." Your background. Like you were something to be ashamed of. Like I was something to be ashamed of. Claire's hand shook as she set down her cup. He didn't mean it like that. Then how did he mean it? Silence again. The kitchen clock ticked loudly on the wall. "I didn't come here to fight," she finally said. "I came because I need to understand something." "Dad, where did that money come from? $8,000 like it was nothing. You've always said business was tight, that you were just getting by." There it was. Not concern about what her husband did. Not an apology for standing there silent while I was humiliated. Just questions about money. I leaned back in my chair. "You remember your grandfather's land?" She nodded slowly. "I sold it 15 years ago. Got a good price because of the highway expansion." Her eyes widened. "How much?" "Does it matter?" "Dad, if you've had money this whole time, why have you been living like this? This old house, your truck is 20 years old. You never go anywhere or do anything." "Because this life is enough for me," I interrupted. "I don't need a big house or a fancy car to be happy. I never did. Your mother and I, we were happy with simple things. Good coffee, a solid day's work, each other. But you let me think you were struggling. When I got married, you said you couldn't afford. I gave you $15,000 for your wedding, Claire. I took out a loan against my workshop to do it. What I chose not to tell you was that I had money sitting in the bank that I could have used instead. Money I was saving for something that mattered." She looked like I'd slapped her. "For what?" "I didn't know yet. Maybe for emergencies. Maybe for when I got too old to work. Maybe for something I hadn't figured out yet. But the point is, it was mine. My choice." "You lied to me." "No." I shook my head. "I just didn't tell you everything. There's a difference. Just like you didn't tell me that Peter had been bad-mouthing me to his colleagues for years. Just like you didn't tell me that he calls me the old man like it's a joke." Her face went pale. "How did you—" "I ran into Tom Chen last month, remember him? He works at Peter's firm. We got to talking and let's just say, Tom's had a few beers too many and Tom's mouth gets loose. He told me about the office parties where Peter does impressions of me. The way I talk, the way I walk. Everyone laughs, including you, apparently." Claire stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I never laughed at you, but you didn't stop him either, did you?" She grabbed her purse, hands shaking. "I should go." "Claire, wait." I stood too. "I didn't tell you about the money because I wanted to see if you'd love me without it. If you'd respect me just for being your father, not for what I could give you. And the truth is, once you married Peter, once you got a taste of his world, I stopped being enough. I became the embarrassing father with sawdust under his nails and a truck older than some of his colleagues." She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. "That's not true." "Then why haven't you been here in 8 months? Why do you only call when you need something? Why did you stand there in that restaurant and let your husband treat me like I was nothing?" "Because I was scared." The words burst out of her. "I was scared that if I defended you, he'd get angry. He'd start one of his moods, and I'd have to deal with it for days. It's easier to just let him vent, let him get it out of his system." My heart broke a little hearing that. "Honey, that's not a marriage. That's survival." "You don't understand. His job is stressful. He has a lot of pressure. Everyone has stress, Claire. That doesn't give him the right to treat people like garbage. It doesn't give him the right to treat you like you have to walk on eggshells." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I need to go." This time I didn't stop her. I watched her walk to the door, pause with her hand on the knob. "Dad, what you did at the restaurant, paying for everyone. Peter's been getting calls, people asking questions about his finances, about whether the firm knows about his spending habits. You embarrassed him in front of important people. I almost felt guilty. Almost. Good." She turned to look at me, shock on her face. "What?" "Good," I repeated. "Maybe it's time Peter learned that actions have consequences, that you can't just treat people however you want without it coming back on you. You're being vindictive." "No, sweetheart, I'm being honest. For the first time in 6 years, I'm being completely honest. And if that makes me the bad guy in your story, then so be it." She left without another word. I stood at the window and watched her drive away, wondering if I'd just lost my daughter for good. But underneath the sadness was something else, something that felt almost like relief. Because for better or worse, the truth was finally out there. And I was done pretending to be less than I was just to make other people comfortable. 2 weeks after Claire left my house, I got a phone call that changed everything. It was Tom Chen, that friend from Peter's law firm I'd mentioned to Claire. His voice was nervous, hesitant. "Walter, I think you should know something. I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but after what happened at the restaurant, I think you deserve to know." I sat down at my kitchen table, phone pressed to my ear. "What is it, Tom?" "It's about Peter. There's been an internal investigation at the firm. Started about 3 weeks ago, actually, before that whole restaurant incident. Someone tipped off the senior partners about some irregularities in his client billing." My stomach tightened. "What kind of irregularities?" "He's been padding hours, Walter, billing clients for work that was never done or inflating the time spent on cases. We're talking about adding hundreds of hours across multiple clients over the past 2 years. The firm's looking at potential losses of over $200,000 in fraudulent billing." I closed my eyes. "Does Claire know?" "I don't think so. Peter's been keeping it quiet, trying to fix it before it becomes official. But Walter, there's more. That dinner at Bellinote, the one where everything went down. Those colleagues at his table weren't just co-workers. They were potential witnesses. Peter had been trying to land a huge corporate client, and those men were from that company. He was showing off, trying to prove he was this big shot who could handle anything, and I ruined it." "You didn't ruin anything." "He did. The client pulled out the next day. Said they couldn't work with someone who treats family that way. Word spreads fast in corporate circles, Walter. What Peter did to you, it made him look unstable, unprofessional. The firm's not happy about it." After I hung up, I sat there for a long time. I should have felt vindicated, maybe even satisfied, but all I felt was tired and sad. Because this wasn't about Peter getting what he deserved. This was about Claire being married to a man who was falling apart and her not seeing it until it was too late. I didn't have to wait long to find out what would happen next. 3 days later, Peter showed up at my workshop. I heard his car before I saw it, that expensive German sedan purring into my gravel driveway. I was sanding down a cabinet door when he walked in without knocking. He looked different. His suit was wrinkled, his tie crooked. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his hair wasn't styled the way he usually kept it. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. "We need to talk," he said, his voice hard but with an edge of desperation. I kept sanding. "So talk." "You need to fix what you did. Call those people from the restaurant, tell them you were drunk, that you made a scene for no reason. Tell them I was trying to help you, and you freaked out." I stopped sanding and looked at him. "I'm not doing that. Do you have any idea what you've cost me?" His voice rose. "That client would have brought in $3 million to the firm over 5 years. $3 million. And they walked because of you." "No, Peter. They walked because of you. Because you threw a plate at your father-in-law in public and made yourself look like an unstable bully." He stepped closer, and I could smell the whiskey on his breath. "You think you're so smart, don't you? With your little stunt, paying for everyone. Where'd that money come from, anyway? Claire said something about your father's land. That's none of your business. Everything about this family is my business. I married into it. I have a right to know what kind of assets are floating around." "Assets." He called me an asset. I set down my sandpaper carefully. "Get out of my workshop. Not until you fix this mess. The only mess here is you, and I heard about the billing fraud, Peter. Tom Chen told me everything." His face went white. Tom had no right. Tom's a decent man who thought I should know what kind of person my daughter married. A liar. A cheat. Someone who steals from his own clients. "I was going to pay it back. It was just temporary, just until some investments came through." "You were stealing, Peter. Dressing it up with fancy words doesn't change what it is." He lunged forward and grabbed the front of my shirt. For a second, I thought he might actually hit me, but then something in him deflated. His hands dropped, and he stumbled backward. "You don't understand," he said, and his voice cracked. "I was trying to build something. Claire, she's used to nice things now. The house, the car, the lifestyle. I couldn't let her down. So you stole to keep up appearances? I was going to fix it. He was almost shouting now. I had a plan. That client would have paid me enough in bonuses to cover what I took. Nobody would have known, but I ruined it. Yes, you ruined everything. I picked up my sandpaper again. No, Peter, you ruined everything the day you decided lying and cheating were acceptable as long as you didn't get caught. You ruined everything when you decided treating people like garbage was fine as long as it served your purposes. I just held up a mirror. Claire will never forgive you for this. Maybe not, but at least I can sleep at night knowing I didn't build my life on lies. He stood there for a moment, swaying slightly. Then he turned and walked out. I watched through the window as he sat in his car for several minutes before driving away. His hands were shaking on the steering wheel. That night, Claire called. Her voice was cold, harder than I'd ever heard it. Peter told me what you said to him, about the investigation, about talking to Tom. It's true, Claire. Your husband's been... I know what he's been doing. Her voice cracked. I've known for 2 months. He told me he was fixing it, that it was a misunderstanding with the bookkeeping, and now the firm's threatening to prosecute. They're giving him a chance to pay it back, but Walter, we don't have that kind of money. The house is mortgaged, the cars are leased, everything we have is tied up in loans and credit. I felt the air leave my lungs. You knew? For 2 months you knew he was stealing. It's not stealing, it's exactly stealing, Claire. And you knew, and you said nothing. Silence. Then quietly, what was I supposed to do? You were supposed to tell him it was wrong. You were supposed to make him face what he did, not help him hide it. You don't understand what it's like. The pressure he's under, the expectations. I understand that you've become someone I don't recognize. My voice broke. The daughter I raised would never stand by while someone stole, lied, and hurt people. She would have had the courage to do the right thing. Don't you dare lecture me about courage, she hissed. You, who hid money from your own family for 15 years. You who waited until the perfect moment to humiliate my husband in public. You want to talk about doing the right thing? I never stole from anyone, Claire. I never treated anyone like they were beneath me, and I never, ever chose money and status over basic human decency. She hung up on me. I stood there in my workshop, phone still in my hand, and realized that the daughter I'd raised was truly gone. In her place was a woman I didn't know. A woman who'd chosen to protect a liar rather than stand up for what was right. The worst part? I wasn't even angry anymore, just heartbroken, because no amount of money, no perfect revenge, could fix the fact that I'd lost my little girl somewhere along the way, and I didn't know if I'd ever get her back. I didn't hear from Claire for 3 weeks after that phone call. 3 long weeks where I went through the motions of living, working in my shop, eating meals I barely tasted, sleeping in fits and starts. I kept my phone on the loudest setting, hoping every buzz would be her name on the screen. It never was. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon in late October, she showed up. I was outside stacking firewood for the winter when I heard her car. This time, she didn't sit in the driveway working up courage. She got out immediately, and I could see she'd been crying. Her eyes were red and swollen, her face pale. I set down the log I was holding and waited. She walked up to me slowly, like she was approaching something fragile that might shatter. Can we talk? Her voice was hoarse. I nodded toward the porch. We sat on the steps, the same steps where I used to sit with her when she was little, where we'd watch thunderstorms roll in across the fields. Margaret used to bring us lemonade and tell us we were both crazy for sitting out in the weather. Claire picked at a loose thread on her jacket. Peter moved out yesterday. I felt my chest tighten. I'm sorry. Are you? She looked at me, and there was something raw in her eyes. Are you really sorry, or is this what you wanted? Claire, I never wanted your marriage to fall apart. I just wanted him to treat me with basic respect. That's all I ever wanted. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. The firm gave him an ultimatum. Pay back the $230,000 he stole, or they prosecute. We don't have it. We don't have anything close to it. The house is going into foreclosure. The cars are being repossessed. Everything's falling apart. I wanted to reach out, to put my arm around her like I used to when she was upset. But something held me back. What are you going to do? I don't know. Her voice broke. I filed for separation yesterday. I can't stay with him, Dad. Not after everything. Not after I realized what he really is. What changed? I asked quietly. 2 months ago, you were defending him. What changed? She was quiet for a long time, watching a cardinal hop across the yard. Last week, I was cleaning out his office at home, trying to organize papers for the lawyer. I found a folder hidden in the back of his filing cabinet. It had copies of emails, text messages, Communications between him and his mother about me. My hands clenched. What did they say? They were planning, Dad. Planning how to manage me, how to keep me away from you. His mother said I was too attached to my working-class roots, that it made Peter look bad. They talked about ways to create distance between us, the missed birthdays, the canceled dinners, the times Peter said we were too busy to visit you. It was all deliberate, all planned. I felt sick. Claire, there was more. Emails about your money, about the land sale. Peter had been trying to find out how much you had. He'd even contacted lawyers about grandparents' rights, about ways to access your assets if something happened to you. He was planning, Dad. Planning for when you died. Planning how to make sure he got whatever you left behind. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd expected. Not because Peter had done these things, but because Claire had lived in the middle of it without knowing. How long had this been going on? Years. Since before we got married. His mother asked about your financial situation in an email from 6 years ago. Peter responded that you were probably broke, but that the house and property might be worth something eventually. She let out a bitter laugh. I was so stupid, so blind. You weren't stupid. You were in love, or you thought you were. I don't even know what I was anymore. She turned to look at me, tears streaming freely now. I'm so sorry, Dad, for everything, for not defending you, for letting him treat you that way, for choosing his version of the truth over what I knew in my heart was right. I'm so sorry. This time I did reach out. I pulled her into a hug and she sobbed against my shoulder like she used to when she was little and the world felt too big and scary. I held her and let her cry, my own eyes burning with tears I wouldn't let fall. I thought I had to be someone else, she said between sobs. Someone sophisticated, someone who belonged in his world. I thought if I just tried hard enough, if I just became what he wanted, everything would be perfect. But I lost myself, Dad. I lost who I was, and I lost you. And for what? For a man who was using me, for a life that was built on lies. You didn't lose me, I said quietly. I'm right here. I've always been right here. But I hurt you. The restaurant, Dad. I stood there and watched him humiliate you, and I did nothing. What kind of daughter does that? I pulled back to look at her. A daughter who was scared. A daughter who was trapped in something she didn't know how to get out of. But you're here now. That's what matters. She shook her head. I don't know if I can forgive myself. Then don't. Not yet. Forgiveness takes time, Claire. For both of us. What happened? It's not going to disappear overnight. But we can start from here. We can start from this moment and build something real again. No pretending. No trying to be someone we're not. Just us. I don't deserve that. Maybe not, but I'm offering it anyway. Because you're my daughter and I love you. Even when you broke my heart, even when you chose him over me, I never stopped loving you. That doesn't go away, sweetheart. Real love doesn't have conditions. She cried harder and I just held her. After a while, she pulled back and wiped her face. Peter's threatening to contest the separation. He says if I don't help him pay back the money, he'll make sure I lose everything in the divorce. The restaurant fired me because of the scandal. I don't have a job. I don't have savings. I have nothing. You have me, I said. You always had me. I can't ask you for money, Dad. Not after everything. You're not asking. I'm offering, but not for Peter, not to pay his debts. For you, to help you get back on your feet, to give you time to figure out what comes next. She looked at me, searching my face. Why? After everything I did, why would you help me? Because that's what family does. Real family. Not the kind that uses you or manipulates you or tries to keep you small. The kind that shows up even when it's hard, even when it hurts. The kind your mother and I tried to teach you about before the world got complicated. We sat there as the afternoon light faded, not talking, just being together. After a while, Claire spoke again, her voice small. I don't know how to fix this. Any of it. You don't have to fix it all at once, one step at a time. First step, you stay here for a while. Take the guest room, get yourself steady. Then we figure out the rest together. Peter won't like that. Peter doesn't get a vote anymore. She nodded slowly. Okay, I'll stay. Just for a little while. I stood and offered her my hand. She took it, and I pulled her to her feet. Come on, let's get you settled. I think there's some of your mother's old clothes in the attic. Might fit you better than those fancy things Peter liked. She laughed, a small, broken sound, but it was a start. As we walked into the house together, I realized something. This wasn't the ending I'd expected. It wasn't neat or simple or satisfying in the way those restaurant customers probably thought it would be after watching me pay that $8,000 bill, but it was real. And sometimes, real is more important than satisfying. Sometimes getting your daughter back, even broken and hurting, is worth more than any revenge could ever be. 6 months passed. Claire moved into the guest room that used to be hers when she was growing up, though it looked different now. I'd converted it to storage years ago, but we cleaned it out together, found some of her old things tucked away in boxes. Her high school yearbooks, the birdhouse she'd made in my workshop when she was 8, photos of her and Margaret baking cookies in the kitchen. She cried when she found that birdhouse, held it in her hands like it was made of glass and said, "I forgot how proud I was of this. I forgot how proud you were of me for making it." The divorce went through in March. Peter didn't contest it in the end because he was too busy with his own legal troubles. The law firm decided to prosecute after all when they discovered the stolen amount was actually closer to $280,000. He took a plea deal, 18 months in minimum security and 5 years probation, plus full restitution. His lawyer parents had to mortgage their house to cover the payback. Claire didn't gloat when she heard. She just looked tired and said, "I wasted 6 years on him. 6 years I'll never get back." They weren't wasted, I told her. You learned something, maybe the hard way, but you learned. She got a job at a small cafe downtown. Nothing fancy, but she seemed lighter there. She'd come home with flour in her hair and tell me about the regular customers, about the old man who ordered the same coffee every morning, about the young couple who came in every Friday for their date. Simple stories about simple moments, the kind of things she used to tell me before Peter convinced her that simple wasn't good enough. One Saturday in April, we were in the workshop together. I was teaching her how to restore an old chair I'd picked up at an estate sale, showing her how to strip the old varnish without damaging the wood underneath. Her hands moved carefully, tentatively, like she was afraid of making a mistake. "You used to do this fearlessly," I said, watching her. "When you were young, you'd just dive in. Didn't matter if you messed up. I was a kid. Kids don't know enough to be afraid. Or maybe adults forget how to try things without being afraid." I handed her a finer grit sandpaper. "Here, try this one. Feel how smooth it is." She took it and ran her fingers across it before applying it to the chair leg. We worked in comfortable silence for a while, just the sound of sandpaper on wood and birds singing outside the open workshop door. "Dad?" Her voice was quiet. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "That night at the restaurant, when you paid for everyone. You didn't plan that, did you?" I thought about it. No. I went there thinking I'd just swallow it like I always did. Take whatever Peter dished out, smile, and leave. But when he threw that plate, when I saw all those people watching, something just snapped. I realized I was done being small. Done letting him make me feel like I was worth nothing. $8,000 is a lot of money to prove a point. It wasn't about the money. It was about showing him, showing you, showing myself that I wasn't who he said I was, that I had value beyond what he could see. I paused in my sanding, though I'll admit, watching his face when that bill came was pretty satisfying. She laughed, a real laugh, the first genuine one I'd heard from her in months. I bet it was. I heard about it from one of the waiters at Bellanata. He said Peter went pale and started sweating, said it was the best thing he'd seen in years of working there. Your mother would have hated that I spent that much on one dinner. No, she wouldn't have. Claire set down her sandpaper. She would have understood. Mom always knew when something mattered. She would have said you did what you had to do. We were quiet again, both of us thinking about Margaret. She'd been gone 13 years, but sometimes it felt like yesterday. Sometimes I could still hear her laugh, still smell her perfume on the breeze. "I miss her," Claire said softly. "I miss who I was when she was here, before I got so lost. She'd be proud of you now, coming back, starting over." That takes more courage than pretending everything's fine. I don't feel courageous. I feel like I failed. Failure's just another word for learning, sweetheart. You didn't fail. You survived something hard, and you came out the other side. That's not failing. That's winning in the way that matters. Summer came, and with it came changes. Claire saved enough from her cafe job to get a small apartment in town. I helped her move, carried boxes up 3 flights of stairs, while she argued that I should let her do it because of my back. But my back was fine, and I wanted to do it. Wanted to be part of this new beginning for her. The night before she moved out, we had dinner together at the kitchen table. Just spaghetti and salad, nothing fancy. but it felt important somehow, like we were marking something. "You nervous?" I asked. "Terrified. I haven't lived alone since college. And even then, I had roommates." "You'll be fine. Better than fine." She pushed pasta around her plate. "Dad, I never thanked you for letting me stay, for not making me feel like a burden, for just being there when I had nowhere else to go." "You don't have to thank me for that." "Yes, I do. Because I know I hurt you. I know those 6 years with Peter, I chose wrong over and over. I chose him over you, his world over ours, and you had every right to turn me away when I showed up here broken. But you didn't." I reached across the table and took her hand. "You're my daughter. That doesn't come with conditions. It doesn't come with an expiration date. When you hurt, I hurt. When you need help, I help. That's just how it is." She squeezed my hand, tears in her eyes. "I'm going to do better, be better. Not for Peter, not for anyone else. For me, and for you. Just be happy, Claire. That's all I ever wanted." A year after that night at Bella Notte, I got a letter. It was from Peter, written from the facility where he was serving his sentence. I almost threw it away without reading it, but something made me open it. The letter was short. He didn't apologize, not really. But he wrote that he'd had a lot of time to think, that he was seeing a counselor, that he was starting to understand the harm he'd caused. He said he hoped Claire was doing well, that he didn't expect forgiveness from either of us, but that he wanted us to know he was trying to be better. I read it twice, then folded it and put it in a drawer. Maybe someday I'd show it to Claire, maybe not. Either way, it didn't change anything. Peter's journey was his own now, separate from ours. Claire was thriving. She got promoted to assistant manager at the cafe, started taking business classes at the community college. She talked about maybe opening her own place someday, something small and welcoming. She came over every Sunday for dinner, and we'd work on projects in the shop afterward. She was getting good at woodworking, had that natural feel for it that I'd seen when she was young. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, she said, "You know what's funny? I spent all those years trying to be someone impressive, someone important, chasing Peter's version of success, and I was miserable. And now I make coffee for a living. I live in a tiny apartment. I drive a 12-year-old Honda, and I'm happier than I've ever been." She looked at me. "How did you always know that the simple life was enough?" "Because your mother taught me. She showed me that happiness isn't about impressing people or having the most expensive things. It's about being able to sit on your porch at the end of the day and feel peace. It's about doing work that means something to you, loving people who love you back, building a life you don't need to escape from." I wish I'd understood that sooner. You understand it now. That's what counts. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky turn orange and pink, and I realized something. That night at the restaurant, when I paid that $8,000 bill, I thought I was proving something to Peter, showing him he was wrong about me, that I had value, that I wouldn't be pushed around. But really, I was proving it to myself, proving that I was worth standing up for, that my dignity mattered, that I didn't have to accept cruelty just to keep the peace. The money wasn't the point. The revenge wasn't the point. The point was choosing myself, my worth, my peace. And in doing that, in finally standing up, I'd somehow found my way back to my daughter. Not the version of her that Peter had molded, but the real Claire, the girl who used to make birdhouses in my workshop and wasn't afraid to get sawdust in her hair. That was worth more than any amount of money, worth more than any satisfaction I'd felt watching Peter's face go pale, worth everything. As the sun set and the first stars appeared, Claire leaned her head on my shoulder, just like she used to when she was little. And I thought about Margaret, about how she'd love seeing this moment. Her two favorite people, finally finding their way back to each other. "Love you, Dad," Claire whispered. "Love you too, sweetheart." And sitting there in the peaceful evening air, I realized I'd finally found what I'd been looking for all along. Not revenge, not vindication, not even an apology. Just peace. The quiet, steady peace of knowing that sometimes the best way to win is to simply refuse to lose yourself.